Why do Freemasons value geometry above all the other liberal arts and sciences? It is not just to do with architecture. Members of the newly found Royal Society, such as Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, Robert Hooke, Thomas Hobbes, Baruch Spinoza, and Christian Huygens, were more interested actually in studying optics. However, their objective was greater than just building telescopes to observe the movement of the stars. The Arab philosopher Al-Kindi explained how the planets emit rays of influence that affected things on Earth. And this was taken as a rational explanation of how astrology worked, that everything in the cosmos influenced everything on Earth, including humans. In Europe, the church dominated scholarship, and the 12th century Bishop of Lincoln, Robert Grosseteste, wrote on the properties of light, taking his starting point from Genesis chapter 1 verse 3, God said, "Let there be light." He explained the process of creation as a natural physical process emanating from the generative power of an expanding and contracting sphere of light. Being a theologian, he wrote about light in terms of metaphysics and the theology of light, understanding light to be the fundamental reality of everything, not only that transmits information, but also is the cause of everything in the universe. Unlike his peers, Grosseteste denounced alchemy, writing in 1236 in Hexameron, an influential theological work on the 6 days of creation, that it was a false art. Kepler continued the investigation of the laws of optics, explaining in 1604 in detail, in the optical part of astronomy, about both lunar and solar eclipses and the unusual colors and corona and shadows seen during eclipses. René Descartes, for example, used geometry in his calculations of the angular radius of a rainbow, which he discovered to be 42 degrees. In a drawing by Descartes, it shows that he understood how light was perceived by the brain and affected the pineal gland. What is interesting is that Descartes wrote this 300 years before it was discovered by Julien Quetelet and Marc Althusser in 1954. Because of its position deep in the brain, Descartes thought the pineal gland possessed special importance, such as a mystical or metaphysical function. And in 1640, he wrote a letter to a friend about his research on the pineal gland, saying that the seat of the soul was in the pineal gland, which upset both philosophers and theologians. In England, Isaac Newton had also given demonstrations at the Royal Society on how a prism would divide white light into the spectrum of colors, coining the word spectrum from the Latin for an image or ghost. Then, using a second prism, together with a lens, he showed he could convert the multicolored spectrum back into white light. 100 years later, William Herschel then discovered invisible light by measuring the heat of each color in Newton's spectrum, including light that could not be seen in the spectrum, invisible light. Scientists of the day thought the liberal arts and sciences in line with the planets, as Dante had explained. He said Jupiter may be compared to geometry because of two properties. One, that it moves between two heavens that are antithetical to its fine temperance, namely the point and the circle. Geometry moves between the point and the circle as between its beginning and end. And these two are antithetical to its certainty, for the point cannot be measured because of its indivisibility, and it is impossible to square the circle perfectly because of its arc, and so it cannot be measured exactly. Geometry, furthermore, is pure insofar as it is without taint of error, and most certainly, both in itself and in its handmaiden, which is called optics. So the reason that scholars such as Newton, Boyle, Hooke, Spinoza, Hobbes, Huygens all found optics so fascinating was that optics could be expressed in mathematical terms. Not only mathematics, but more especially geometry. Thus Dante called optics the handmaiden of geometry. Geometry was the language of the universe, and by understanding this language, scholars could understand the works of God. Studying optics using geometry connected people to astrology, astronomy, cosmology, and the mind of God. Thank you.